Kicking the parable worth the stuff of legends, we're taken to a rotting and desolate French prison. And geez, looking around, it looks like this is where the worst of the worst suffer the worst of the worst fates. Approaching a cell at the far edges of the prison is the eponymous man in the iron mask. So, how did this legend begin? Well, it's the year 1662 in Paris, and from the looks of it, the streets are in some form of riot. There's people bare-knuckle boxing everywhere. It's almost too hilarious. Somewhere, yes, we've got a jolly man that looks like a pimp Captain Hook enjoying his time with some courtesans. He comes to this praying dude named Aramis to invite him to party. Aramis insists to Porthos here that he just wants to pray. He also claims there are other important things to life than a seething pair of milkers. Pretty based if you ask me. Porthos asks him to party and he really insists, but Aramis really just wants to beg to the Lord. They begin to tussle about it. Then D'Artagnan shows up, whose presence breaks up the fight. His name's a bit of a mouthful, so let's name him Dart. Dart tells these two knuckleheads they need to visit the king, and it looks like these three were all part of the famous Musketeers. Well, now they're aged and rusty. Somewhere else, Athos here is pushing his son Raoul here to ask the woman of his dreams to finally marry him. But he's a bit shy, so his father encourages him with the ring of her dead wife. Moving past that, we're finally taken to the Wolf of Wall Street. Whoops, wrong movie. I meant King Louis XIV. His subjects tell him that Paris is suffering due to famine, but he's got other pressing matters, like telling priest Aramis here of his super-secret mission, find out who the leader of the Jesuits is and eliminate his sorry tuchus. Aramis reluctantly accepts, but he'll get it done. Somewhere outside the palace, Raoul and his bride-to-be, Christine Belfort, get ogled by the king. I mean, her last name is Belfort. Proceeding forward, Dart here has a bit of trouble with the party, but it's the king's order to totally enjoy this regal affair. Raoul, on the other hand, keeps trying to do his big confession, but there's far too many distractions, including this rich pig chase that will keep Raoul distracted. So while he's out of the picture, it's time for the king to put his royal riz into play. Christine is a bit spooked when the king comes by, but the Giat overcomes him. So he leans in for a little cheeky kiss. That's when an assassin comes along to game end the king, but Dart here lives up to his name and throws his sword like a dart. The assassin is eliminated, Christine is taken away by Raoul, and then the assassin throws his last words. Disgusted by this, the king makes his death faster. They suspect that this may be the work of the Jesuits too. You remember that dirty, creepy prison? Well, that man in the iron mask is seen scraping his mask against the wall. No reason in particular, just wanted to let you know. Back to the royal palace, we're taken to a woman who prays to God. Apparently, this is Queen Anne of Austria, the mother of King Louis. She talks to Dart about the incident a bit, then she bounces off. Suddenly, Dart gets word that Raoul doesn't want to join the Musketeers anymore. So he goes to the source of the problem. Raoul's father, Athos. They have a few drinks, then Raoul comes home. Apparently, he's been drafted so that the king can have his slimy grasp on Christine once he leaves her alone. What a snake the king is. Dart confirms this, so Athos is angry for his son. Dart proclaims he'll try to convince the king to stop this madness. Well, madness indeed comes to the next scene, as the Paris riots attack the Musketeers because they're insanely hungry. Dart makes a stand and tries to calm the people down with his musketeeries. Unfortunately, that doesn't work, so they throw the rotten fruits at him. He takes a taste of this, and he's convinced. He'll try to talk to the king about them too. Just like that, the people of Paris are quenched for now. After his royal rub-off, he sets off to eat alone. But here comes Dart to talk to him. He tells him about the rotten food being pushed around Paris. Then here comes real talk. Yes, it's about Christine. It's quite the short talk, but the king promises that Raoul will return shortly. Dart is somewhat relieved by this, so he leaves. The king gets to work on his promises. By that, I mean have one of the advisors swiftly executed for suggesting rotten food, then ordering his men to shoot any rioters. I love monarchy. In the front lines, Raoul is seen braving the front lines, but he idiotically walks into artillery fire. So Christine gets the word of his rather stupid end, and so does Athos. Both of them did not take it very well, especially Athos. So he goes to solo the king and all of his men, but nah, he'd win. Or so he thought. Dart calms Athos down, claiming that Raoul was killed by enemy fire, but he gets his knife and proclaims that Dart is the traitor. Suddenly, here comes the king trying to royally rizz up Christine again. This time, he goes full force by telling Christine that he's already trying to heal and feed her family. Looks like Christine is not entirely unopposed to the idea of his kingly rizz. Looks like Raoul's rolling in this grave. Going underground, we see Porthos and Aramis going to a secret tomb. And there, the four original musketeers finally meet once again, much to the dismay of Athos and Dart. Aramis tells everyone his secret mission: to kill the head of the general of the Jesuit order. Here's one problem. That's him. Here's Aramis' proposal thaw: replace the king. Simple, right? Well, everyone but Dart agrees, because he swore some stupid oath. Well, Athos is done with this, so the next time they see each other, someone's bound to die. Aramis tries to convince him otherwise, but Dart will stand by to simp for his king. Simping is such a desolate cultural affair, so here's an iron mask being made just because. Some days pass, and it looks like the king finds out about the little scene Athos caused a few days ago. The king here is a little bit annoyed by this transgression, but Dart will stay by his side. And just like that, we get another glimpse of the man in the iron mask. He spends his lonely nights in this prison, but at least he can always climb up and gaze at the beauty of the moon. Somewhere nearby in the sewers, the three musketeers are in disguise and are trying to infiltrate some secret sewage facility. Aramis is here to pass off as a priest trying to get a confession out of the man in the iron mask, but once the guards aren't looking, the plan springs into motion with this body double. Aramis gets the man in the iron mask to work with him, so the guards come in and buy the double. They think Aramis brought the plague, so they escort him out since they don't want his germs. Then, of course, the body double is burned. The mission is a success in getting the man in the iron mask out. They bring him to a secret hideout where they try to brute force the iron mask off. Once the mask is off and his face is revealed, he looks like the king himself. He's finally free from the mask. So then he asks the question why he was imprisoned for 6 years. Before this, he lived a simple, friendless, quiet life. But then boom, incarceration. Philip, the man behind the iron mask, is then cleaned up, but not before he thanks Athos. Meanwhile, Porthos is out here bummed out that there was no action in that mission. The three musketeers try to set up dinner as they come to a realization with their crusty old lives. Then Porthos makes a scene with his kidney stones. Suddenly, one of the Jesuits calls in and tells them that he is ready. Who is he? Well, come look. So it's finally time for the curtains to come down. It all began when King Louis was born, and all of the four musketeers were standing by near this event. Apparently, the queen didn't just give birth to one son, but two. The former king was worried about this entire ordeal, because let's face it, any twins with an upheld legacy are bound to try and kill each other, right, Dante and Virgil? So the king addressed this issue by trying to make one of them disappear. That unlucky twin was Philip. Ironically, it is also revealed that Aramis was the one who put him in the iron mask. With everything revealed, Athos and Porthos don't seem to like this plan because it's a bit ridiculous. In terms of all the cards on the table, Philip seems overwhelmed with this task at hand. I mean, who knows? Even if you replace him, he just might grow up to be another Louis. Speaking of Louis, Here he is about to do an unboxing for him alone. What's in the box? A 5-weight you. Nah, it's the burnt mask from the prison. He tries on the mask, but no, this isn't the cursed mask of the Aztecs that turns you into a vampire. Somewhere else, the Queen and Dart get the news of Philip's alleged burning, so they repent up until both of them get too freaky. Apparently, these two have had these secret trysts for a while now. Back to the Musketeers, Aramis talks with Athos about their chances of their plan succeeding. Apparently, Athos thinks you can't pass Philip off as Louis, maybe in a year or two. Sure, but here's another kicker. The king is going to have a masquerade ball, and it might be their one and only perfect chance to replace King Louis. By the way, this party is 3 weeks from now, so this makes it all tenser. Suddenly, the two see Porthos walking in the barn, hanging brain. But that's not the only thing hanging. Apparently, he tries to take low-tier God's advice, but Aramis saw this coming as he sawed the beamed Porthos was cutting loose. While they have to convince Porthos to be useful, Athos sees Philip trying to don the mask again. He says he feels rather unsafe without it. Time for some deep contemplation. This is a good time to refill your popcorn, folks. Back to the fate at hand. Philip is very shaky about this plan. He doesn't want to pretend all his life, so he questions the plan at hand. Athos cuts him some slack, but also he's here because he wants to know if his son's life was in vain or not. With this, Philip seems determined for some kingly training, but not before Aramis vows to Athos that if this plan fails, they're going to go with the original plan, violent treason. Aramis would be honored to die beside his 2 brothers. That doesn't include Dart. So it's time for the training montage. Philip learns to fight, have some manners, learns social norms and etiquette, and even learns to ride a horse. In between these times, it looks like Philip has his eyes on some farm girl snatch. Speaking of which, something in the mail comes for Christine. It's from Raoul. Has he been reincarnated? Nope, he just knows he was about to die, so this was a parting gift. Christine has grown guilty of this, and in her night out with the king, she just wasn't feeling it. Looks like Raoul knows he would get gamed and Christine being in the palace, so now Christine feels very sus of King Louis. The king gaslights Christine about what happened to Raoul, but now the truth comes out. Christine only feels like she's pretending to love him, and she says they will both rot in hell. But no. Only Christine will, because King Louis is entitled not to. Back to the Musketeers. Suddenly, Aramis and Porthos must league in order to help defend Paris, as King Louis' order for every rioter out there to be shot is about to come into play. Now, Athos is stuck with teaching Philip how to be king alone. Some more bad news comes once the 2 Musketeers reach the city. The ball has now been moved closer because of the king's falling out with Christine. So Porthos, on his part, makes his play by making his women finish the ball clothes. As for Athos, well, he's teaching Philip to be quite the horrid king to pass him off as Louis. But Athos breaks down at the idea of his son. Back in the palace, Queen Anne asks for forgiveness, but instead, she gets Aramis. He tells her about their little bait and switch plan. Just like that, the day is here. The 3 Musketeers saddle up with Philip, and Operation Switcheroo is a go. The ball starts, and there are dancing and masks almost everywhere. Everyone is here, including the king, Dart, Philip, and the 3 Musketeers. Suddenly, the king begins getting delusional visions of the Iron Mask. At first, he writes it off, but then it becomes more and more frequent. He feels like he's having a schizo thread, so he storms off, leaving Dart to attend to the partygoers. The Iron Masks are, of course, of the Musketeers' fabrication, and then they spring into action and ambush the king. They knock him out, and the switcheroo is set. Philip is now in the king's guards, while Louis is in some poor bum's clothes. Dart is guarding the outside, so it's time for them to go back to the secret entrance. With one final hug to Athos, Philip takes his first steps into royalty. The king is back, so he's rather nervous, but he makes his way towards his throne. Looks like everyone buys it, and the ball continues as planned. But then he helps this swine, and just like that, everyone is a bit sussed out. Suddenly, here comes the queen. Looks like Philip holds it together, but Dart feels something is wrong, so he investigates. Meanwhile, the queen knows of the secret plan, so she tells him to lay low for now, as they will eventually have their chance to catch up. Suddenly, Christine makes a scene, and she thinks this is still Louis. So she accuses him of murdering Raoul thanks to the evidence she found ordering Raoul to be at the front lines, but then Philip comforts her. Dart senses something is up, so he asks his men to guard the palace, while he takes the new king away. Dart's men catch up to the three musketeers in the secret passages, so now they have to find them while taking care of Louis. They try to book it, but they're overwhelmed and sealed off by Dart and his men. Having their backs against the wall, having the imposter be sus, and their plan falling apart. Athos springs into action by taking Louis as a hostage. They take both royalties with them, but then Dart one-ups them by threatening to stab Philip. Swords get tense, and in the mix, Dart and his men grab both the king and Philip. Just like that, the three musketeers are left empty-handed. So all the truth comes out to Dart, and he's appalled by King Louis' transgressions. Suddenly, Philip begs to be brought back to the imprisoned life. And so shall it be. Of course, Dart is then tasked to have his old musketeers hunted down, or he will be hunted down. Apart from this, Christine is revealed to have committed Sudoku. Now, the king's worldview is falling apart. Just like that, Philip is also back in the mask. The three musketeers are on the run, but then they find a note from Dart that he knows where Philip is. Looks like he switched sides, and the three musketeers now shine their old garbs. They infiltrate the Bastille, where Philip is in. Even Dart gets riding in his old outfit too. He makes his farewell to Queen Anne, but little did he know that he was being watched. The three musketeers then bust Philip out, but it looks like the king and his men are on their way. In their darkest hour, D'Artagnan reunites with his former musketeers. Suddenly, they're being cornered by the king and his men. With nowhere left to run, the four musketeers take a stand against the king and his men. It's 20 against 4, which is not fair considering the four are legendary. The king offers Dart a peaceful retirement and a swift execution to his friends. Of course, this sounds ridiculous, but since they're cornered, everyone else is actually considering it. Plot twist. Dart is the father of both Louis and Philip. He never knew Philip existed, and for that, he is remorseful. Time is running out, so the four musketeers make their final hurrah. They charge, but the other musketeers revel at their valor, so most of them miss their shots. When the smoke clears, they all use their based riz to get the other soldiers to stop. This is all good up until Louis stabs Dart. The truth comes out on the other soldiers. Philip bids D'Artagnan his last farewell. The new captain turns on the king. And with that, Operation Switcheroo is back on the map, boys. Louis is imprisoned in the Iron Mask. Then the three remaining musketeers are assigned council status. Eventually, they all bury D'Artagnan. And the new king wishes Athos to have this father and son-like bond. Soon, it was revealed that Louis was given a pardon, but set off to live peacefully in a different country, where the queen would visit from time to time. As for the new king, well, he became the greatest ruler in all of France, all for one, and one for all, because that's it for The Man in the Iron Mask, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Jeremy Irons, and John Malkovich. Who's your favorite musketeer? Let us know at the comments below using #CinemaRecap, and we'll see you in the next glorious revolution.